So I'm looking at bail denial in the US in the federal courts and trying to figure out whether it was fair for Diddy's judge. I think there were two judges. He was denied initially by a female judge and then they went to a male judge. Correct me if I'm wrong. So I think there were two judges and two denials because they feel that he will obstruct justice. And apparently, that is a good basis to do that. I mean, in my opinion, um, it was a bit harsh, but maybe it wasn't. I mean, it seems that the judge is basing it on the fact that Diddy called one of the witnesses more than 50 times after she was subpoenaed by the grand jury to talk about her experiences with him. And I mean, this was obviously prior to the indictment, right? She was simply subpoenaed. He was not yet indicted when he called her. And she was apparently a member of a girl singing group, and she just filed a case against Diddy for assault, of the sexual nature. And Diddy apparently, upon hearing that she'd been subpoenaed, he called her more than 54 times to talk with her. And so the judges feel that that is a form of obstruction of justice and witness tampering. So you have here, when can bail be denied? If you're a flight risk, I don't think he's a flight risk because they've had his passports since the spring, apparently, and the passport of all his children. And I think he's trying to sell his private jet, so he's clearly not a flight risk. If you're accused of particularly violent crime, the judge might also decide that you're a potential threat to the community. Now, I don't know that violence is a part of this indictment in the sense that in 2016, so 8 years ago, he had this incident with his girlfriend in a hotel. I mean, 8 years ago is 8 years ago. It's a while back. I don't think they have any recent accusations that he has been beating up anybody, shooting anybody, or committing any other violent acts against people recently. I know back in the 90s he had that issue in a nightclub with Jennifer Lopez where somebody was shot in the face. That's violent, but that is not a part of this indictment, right? That is not a part of this indictment, and I would argue that it's quite prejudicial to bring it in, even though you can in some cases bring in prior bad acts, and have the court consider that, especially in sentencing a defendant, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong. But to deny bail for violent crime here, when we're talking about racketeering and sex trafficking and prostitution, I don't know if that would be very credible. I don't think it really would be a basis to deny bail in this particular case, given the actual charges and not the prior bad acts of the defendant. He clearly is not accused of terrorism in this case, to my knowledge, so that would not be a basis to deny bail. Is he accused of a crime punishable by death or life? Yeah. Racketeering could get him life, can't it? In these cases, you are a threat, and the court will say you should not have access to pretrial release. Okay, so racketeering is clearly a very serious crime if you are convicted. But the racketeering prong of this indictment, I think, is the weakest prong. There is no evidence, in my opinion, again, as I said in the previous video, that this man conspired with others to engage in criminal activity for commercial profits. This man engaged in activities, certain types of activities which are distasteful, disgusting, and nasty, and gross to most of us, for his personal gratification with a bunch of adults, both men and women. And it is unclear at this point whether consent was given, but certainly one of the women was in a 10-year relationship with this man and has been photographed multiple times, countless times, out in public with this man, dressed to the nines. She was seen as his girlfriend. She's called his girlfriend even in the current case, his ex-girlfriend, in fact. So it is unclear to me that the government can make out a racketeering case because there was no commercial profit involved. There was sexual gratification that was the end result of his conduct, right? So to deny bail based on this racketeering charge to me is pretty dubious, okay, with all due respect to the court. Drug-related crimes, I don't think he's accused of selling narcotics. I mean, he seems to be one of the victims of the opioid epidemic in the country, right? We know that in America, just maybe too many Americans are addicted to some kind of a drug. And this man seems to be a drug addict, right? And if we're going to treat some drug addicts as being victims of the drugs and of the pharma industry and the drug culture, then we're going to have to treat everybody the same way, right? You can't deny bail because this guy takes drugs. I mean, too many Americans, as far as I'm concerned, take drugs, right? There's an opioid epidemic in the country. So that can't be a basis to deny this man bail. And I don't think the judge denied bail on that basis either. Prior convictions, I'm not aware that he has any prior convictions that would render him, a risk or what does it say here? It says if you have a prior record of felony offenses, the court could consider it a basis for denying bail. I don't think that's his case, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. Has he been convicted of something? I don't know. Probation violation, ditto for that. He's not on probation, so that's not a basis. But the last two, obstruction of justice and witness tampering, I mean, he may have a problem, Houston, with this. It says, if there is a chance you might try to obstruct justice, such as juror intimidation, the court could deny bail. Okay, obviously, no jury has been picked yet. They're not at that point. So I don't think that's an issue. It's moot. But the witness tampering, where if there's a chance you might try to intimidate witnesses from testifying, they could deny bail. They probably got him there because he did try to call that woman multiple times. But I mean, if I had to appeal, I mean, I would argue that, this was somebody he clearly was having some kind of ongoing, sexual relationship with, if not an actual relationship. He was, I don't think it was a one-time thing. And so he's calling her before he was even indicted. He was not indicted. Sure, she was subpoenaed, right? But there was no indication that she would yet be a witness. She was being subpoenaed. Doesn't mean that the prosecution was going to use her as a witness, right? He knew her. They had a thing years and years before. And he tried to call her like, look, what's going on? I mean, we were, whatever he was going to say to her. I have no idea. But the argument is that he called her prior to his indictment. Prior to being formally indicted and arrested is when he called her. Okay. Now that he has been arrested and there is an actual case in place, because for all we know, the grand jury could have decided not to indict Mr. Combs. That has happened multiple times, right? And so there would have been no issue of witness tampering at that point. I don't think, right? So the argument is that because he made these calls prior to his indictment and arrest, the court should show some leniency and grant his petition for bail, right? Of course, if he were to violate the bail at that point by calling the witness after he has been arrested and indicted, then we have an argument, right? But this was done prior to his arrest and indictment. And I think his lawyers should focus on that point, that, he should be granted bail and given a chance, to be free until he's convicted of the crimes. He has not been convicted. He has not been tried and convicted of any crime at this point, right? And the idea that he's going to tamper with witnesses is a weak point because again, he contacted this former lover of his. Whatever happened in the privacy of their experience is a whole other matter. But he contacted her prior to being indicted formally and arrested and detained, right? So he should get his bail. And given the benefit of the doubt that he's not going to be tampering with witnesses, they just want to lock this guy up. This is what I really think. And you know, as I said before in the tape before in the video before this one, I mean, his lifestyle certainly is not one that I find interesting. I find it, in fact, you know, just horrific, disgusting, vile, filthy, beneath my dignity. Okay, that's my personal, you know, position on this. But we don't have to be friends. We don't have to hang out. But I mean, I think the law should be applied in a fair way. And I think that somebody else coming in on these charges would have been granted bail, I think, because I mean, certainly racketeering in this case is just outrageous. I don't think there was any racketeering here, unless I don't understand what racketeering is, right? I can't wait to hear it, unless they are going to amend the statute or something. But, and again, to be clear, beating up your girlfriend, whether at home or in a hotel room, is reprehensible, and he should do some time for that. I mean, I would say at least a year or two, right? And get a long, 10 years probation and certain restrictions on his freedom, but not a life imprisonment for a case like this. And certainly not racketeering. They have not made out a racketeering case, in my opinion, and they don't have the elements of racketeering met in this case. Anyway, so that's it. They denied him bail twice, and the lawyer said he's going to appeal. So let's see what happens. See you in the next one. Take care. Bye.